Welcome to the September edition of the AJP-Heart and Circulatory Physiology Video Table of Contents, or From the Editor's Desk. We at AJP appreciate the stress that everyone is under during this time. We truly hope that you will find some interesting science in this month's issue that stimulates your creative juices and diverts your thoughts away from some personal stress. So let's take a peek at what's inside this month's issue. Leon et al. Differentiated the effects of acute beta-adrenergic stimulation and cardiomyocyte stretch, increased sarcomere length, on calcium transient dynamics and force generation using a novel computational model of cardiac electromechanics. Using two different models, the coupled model was validated using experimental data from large mammals or human samples. The model reproduced force frequency, quick release, and isotonic contraction experiments, validating the bidirectional electromechanical interactions. An increase in beta-adrenergic receptor stimulation increased the amplitudes of force, augmented inotropy, and calcium transient, and shortened both force and calcium transient duration. Using a novel coupled human electromechanical model, they identified differential effects of beta-adrenergic stimulation and stretch on calcium and force. They showed that their combination, rather than individual contributions, is key to ensure force generation, rapid relaxation, and low diastolic calcium levels. Lakhani and co-workers compared the effects of acute and chronic tobacco cigarette smoking and electronic cigarette vaping on forearm-mediated dilation. FMD was compared in 47 non-smokers, 49 chronic EC vapors, and 40 chronic tobacco cigarette smokers at baseline, and then after EC vapors and non-smokers acutely used an EC with nicotine, an EC without nicotine, and a nicotine inhaler at 4-week intervals, and after tobacco smokers acutely smoked tobacco smoke compared with sham controls. Baseline FMD was not different among the groups, although the increase in nicotine was similar after EC vapors used nicotine versus tobacco smokers. In otherwise healthy young people who regularly smoke tobacco cigarettes or EC vapors, impaired forearm dilation compared with that in non-smokers was not present at baseline. However, forearm-mediated dilation was significantly impaired after smoking one tobacco cigarette, but not after vaping an equivalent dose, estimated by the change in plasma nicotine of an electronic cigarette, consistent with the notion that non-nicotine constituents in tobacco cigarette smoke mediate the impairment. Salt intake may alter blood pressure regulation, but no study has investigated the impact of salt reduction versus salt loading on morning blood pressure surge and sympathetic neural control in premenopausal women with a history of normal pregnancy. Takeda et al. Studied 9 healthy women who were given a low-salt diet and a high-salt diet for 1 week each. Ambulatory blood pressure at 24 hours was measured, and the percent change in blood volume was calculated following low salt and high salt. Ambulatory blood pressure and morning surge of blood pressure did not differ between low and high salt. From low salt to high salt, blood volume increased by 4.3%. Muscle sympathetic nerve activity was higher, whereas sympathetic vascular transduction was lower in low salt than high salt. Changes in muscle sympathetic nerve activity from low salt to high salt were correlated to percent changes in blood volume. Thus, salt intake affects sympathetic neural control, but not morning surge of blood pressure in premenopausal women with a history of normal pregnancy. Duchenne muscular dystrophy is an X-linked disease caused by null mutations in dystrophin and characterized by muscle degeneration. Garbinicus et al. Show that circulating levels of endogenous methylated arginines, including asymmetric dimethylarginine, which acts as an NO synthase inhibitor, are elevated by acute necrotic muscle damage and in chronically necrotic dystrophin-deficient mice. They hypothesized that excessive ADMA impairs muscle NO production and diminishes exercise tolerance in Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. They used transgenic expression of dimethylarginine dimethylaminohydrolase, which degrades methylated arginines, to investigate their contribution to exercise-induced fatigue in DMD. Although infusion of exogenous ADMA was sufficient to impair exercise performance in wild-type mice, transgenic DDAH expression did not rescue exercise-induced fatigue in dystrophin-deficient male MDX mice. Surprisingly, DDAH transgene expression did attenuate exercise-induced fatigue in dystrophin heterozygous female MDX carrier mice. Improved exercise tolerance was associated with reduced heart rate and improved cardiac beta-adrenergic responsiveness in DDAH transgenic MDX carriers. They concluded that DDAH overexpression increases exercise tolerance in female DMD carriers. Finally, in a Perspectives article, Mishra and colleagues discussed COVID-19 risk in diabetes. Coronavirus Disease 2019 and Diabetes Outcomes trials revealed that 10.6% of patients with diabetes mellitus hospitalized for COVID-19 die within 7 days. Several studies from New York, Italy, and China confirm that patients with diabetes are at a much higher risk for mortality due to COVID-19. Besides respiratory illness, COVID-19 increases cardiac injury and diabetic ketoacidosis. In patients with diabetes, impaired glucose use alters metabolic and consequently biological processes, instigating pathological remodeling, which has detrimental effects on cardiovascular systems. A majority of biological processes are regulated by non-coding microRNAs, which have emerged as promising therapeutic candidates for several diseases. The article describes potential roles of microRNAs as a biomarker and therapeutic candidate, especially for heart failure in patients with diabetes and COVID-19. Thanks for watching. Please stay safe and contact us with any issues related to your manuscripts. We're here to help. We'll see you next month, and don't forget to send us your best work now.